Hey, what's going on, man? So I'm just pulling up the first video, um, part one here for the sports betting performance. We're basically going to be going through the transaction history, right, more in depth. Um, just kind of for, integrity's sake, third party verification sake, whatever you want to say. This is that first video, so you can go back and verify yourself. Essentially everything I presented here, right? This first campaign, starting off with the $100 deposit. This is our first campaign here, right? Starting off with the $100 deposit. First engagement. I think it's right here. Where was that first engagement? Right here. $100 bet. At what time? 247. Logged it in my notes as 248. So, for the sake of that, we'll put in that, that 1 minute difference there. But saying that to say, man, there is a consistency here. And if you really want to go back and look, you can find that as well. So, yeah. This video is going to be almost going a layer deeper with everything that we talked about in the first video. We will be seeing the transaction history, the way that the account essentially compounds up. And what's different is essentially this. We're going to be talking about the sport, the specific situation, and then the odds within that sport and that specific situation as well. I'll have a third and final video, which is essentially going into each of these situations and talking about the notes that I'm taking while in the bet and really what I'm seeing in the game as well. So, yeah, man, I wanted to approach it in this sort of like these three layers, if you will. And so I hope this isn't too overwhelming. But really, just again, going more in depth. And really, all I'm providing is some psychological conversations, some different strategies to consider, and, sort of an insight on my psychological profile as far as how I like to engage. So we got these 6 months of activity here: January, February, March, a lot of activity in March, and then April, July, and November. We got the x-axis here as well, right? Pretty self-explanatory. The sport, the bet, the odds, the stake, the start and end time of the bet, the length of the bet, the result, the P&L, and the account balance post-bet. So saying all that to say, nothing crazy. This is more of that 40,000 foot view. I don't have February's data. I was not taking notes during February here for some reason. I really don't remember why. All of this is correct. All this is third party verified. This did actually happen. You can see it in the transaction history. However, what we don't know is basically what I was seeing and what I was engaging in. So, that is something that I don't know. I really don't even remember why I didn't take notes here. But either way, from this different perspective of essentially like a 5 hour campaign and then, a handful of hours the next day as well, that was really where my head was at. Instead of something like a January campaign, few activities per day, et cetera, that like week long campaign. So I'll stop rambling. I'll just get straight into it. So first bet of January here, soccer bet, late game soccer bet, late game money line bet, essentially anticipating that whoever is up in the game so far is going to stay up and win the game. Pulling the trigger on that bet, that money line bet, late game. Simultaneously, really looking for I'm looking to see the odds run away slightly, then enter into the bet, and then I'm looking for the odds to continue to run away, right? AKA I'm looking for the book to become less and less willing to take the other side of that bet as time transpires, right? You could also complement that with potentially like visually watching the game. But the majority of my bets, I'm literally not even watching the game. You know what I'm saying? So this is my first go-to situation is this late game soccer play. I really like it because the odds are like the odds that are offered are pretty solid. You know what I mean? What was this? This was that 15% return, right? In 9 minutes. The soccer game will end soon, no matter what. That's another thing that I like about it as well. But really, psychologically, I enjoy the short, relatively short engagement and the relatively, um, beefy odds, if you will. Comparing, contrasting that to, some type of tennis offering, um, where, we basically see like, what is the return there? It's like a 5% return, give or take. Um, so yeah, man, we'll get into this a little bit here, but if there was sort of a um, kind of like a 40,000 foot view, man, what's play one? I think this might make a little bit more sense in video three when we look at my notes. Um, but this is play one here, and it's a soccer play, soccer money line, right? Play two here is tennis money line, and it's literally the same thing. It's literally the same thing, man. There is a bit of a nuance though, simply understanding the difference between soccer and tennis, right? And so, what I was saying earlier, the reason that I appreciate the soccer so much is that like this game is going to end soon, no matter what. If you're familiar with tennis, right, there's different ways that a tennis match could be played. It could be like three sets, aka like a best of three, a race to two, if you will, right? A race to the, winning two sets. It could be a best of five game, right? A race to winning the first three sets, right? And then it could be a essentially like a race to seven, I believe, best of five, or yeah, race to five, if you will, right? Well, really race to four. But the majority of these are three set tennis matches, if you will, so best of three, race to two, if you will. Um, that could present itself in multiple fashions, right? If there are three sets in a game, that can mean that a win could present itself to any player in the following fashions. It could be a first set win, second set win. They absolutely dominate, absolutely sweep, taking care of business quick, right? It could be a first set or yeah, first match. Yeah, set. It could be a first set win, second set loss, third set win, right? So they win that first game, that first set, lose the second set, potentially tired a little bit, potentially, the opponent is just really going to work, has a lot of positive momentum that second game. But everybody knows whoever won that first game is going to pull it out in the third set. So it could be something like that as well. It could also be first set they lose, potentially off of their game, but they're still favored. Then they, show their ability and momentum second set, third set, right? And so all of those different positions could, or all those different situations, all those different presentations of this money line situation here could essentially, like all of those are possibilities, is really all I'm trying to say. Those possibility trees, those, potential trees, if you will, that is not offered in the soccer money line because we simply understand like we're literally betting on this winning and it's going to happen soon no matter what, right? We're betting on this winning. Ideally, this dude just goes ahead, goes to work, and closes up the game. Um, but that might not necessarily happen as quickly as we'd like it to. So we'll get into that as well. Saying all that to say, man, is that something that you could handle psychologically? Would you be willing to engage in that risk, essentially anticipating he's gonna finish up the game in under 10 minutes? Okay, hypothetically, what if he doesn't? How do you engage that, right? And so being able to understand those different situations that you're essentially like putting your capital behind, I think is crucial. And I've come to these understandings of like, dude, this is my 1-2 punch right here. The soccer money line and the tennis money line. I've come to those understandings, experimenting and really spending a lot of time here, engaging in it, seeing how DraftKings responds, et cetera, et cetera. Um, but saying that to say, man, like just because this is my 1-2 punch, that doesn't necessarily mean that that would be your 1-2 punch, because we have different psychological makeups potentially, right? However, at the same time, too, I feel like, if I had to like sell this, if I had to sell the reason that I enjoy this, I feel like I have, right? And it's simply, um, it really kind of revolves around the time, dude, the time of the bet. So either way, moving forward, um, I'm looking for that like healthy lead intra set, if you will, and then simultaneously the anticipation that, wow, they do have that healthy lead. Oh my goodness, I can't. It's so obvious this guy's going to win. I can't believe DraftKings is offering this bet, um, engaging in it, and then essentially anticipating that the offering goes away entirely because it becomes so apparent that this is going to pan out the way that it's looking like it's going to pan out, right? That same idea holds true in the soccer match. However, it's not as apparent, and that's why the odds are essentially offered, lower. Like the return offered is higher in a soccer versus a tennis money line situation here. So hope that makes sense. Um, but yeah, pretty fascinating, right? Engaging the tennis bet, and then we see that he does in fact, uh, close up shop and does it fairly quickly. So we can appreciate that. You'll see with some of these tennis matches though that doesn't happen as quickly as we would like to see it. And really just highlighting that to say, dude, how would you personally handle that? What type of risk would you put behind this type of a bet specifically? What would you need to see, um, to potentially risk more or less, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, really my third play is the basketball play again. Same thing, man. Literally literally the same thing. Just doing it with basketball. So you see the pattern, you see my style is the money line bet. That's something that I've enjoyed. Um, and really, right, like all of this mirrors itself, and it's simply understanding, like, okay, I'm looking for that in basketball. What am I looking for? I'm looking for there to be like simply, understanding that like basketball can be volatile. The swings can be volatile, right? Like you could have that 10-point lead. A couple dudes hit three threes in a row. Now it's like that 1 point lead or whatever. Um, so it's like, what is that lead that I would want to see? Like, okay, this is my psychology with the basketball anticipation. What is the lead? It's also interesting as well, just sort of as an aside. I'm actually the most familiar with basketball, and it's my least favorite, game or sport to bet on. So I don't know. That's kind of interesting, if you will. But there's sort of this understanding, right? Like where's my head at with basketball? It's understanding like what I said with the potential of threes, the potential of like simply the professional execution, of these players at this high level. A lead could be eaten into fairly quickly, but at the same time too, there's the understanding of the professionals who are in the lead, and their ability to essentially like run time down, right, run the clock down, etc. So what is that lead that you would want to see where you would be confident that these pros can basically just run the clock down, um, without that money line running away too much, right? Like we don't want the lead to get too big before we get in, right? We ideally, dude, I want to see that 10-point lead. I want to engage, and then I want the team to run on that momentum, and I want them to stretch it to a 15, 20-point lead, right? And as that lead is stretching, DraftKings is no longer willing to offer that bet. However, I want to have engaged before that, obviously, right? So there's even like more of a nuance, in my opinion, with the basketball. Well, as I say that, I would say that almost like soccer, this soccer situation is the most binary situation. I almost want to argue that basketball falls just under that simply due to the time. Like this game's going to wrap up pretty soon no matter what. And we know that, and we understand that. And I would say that tennis could potentially take longer than we anticipated, right? Especially if you're betting on um, essentially a two-set game. Like this dude's going to wrap it up in the second set here. It looks like he's going to wrap it up. Oh shit, the opponent has now come back, won that second set. Now we're into the tiebreaker set. Um, what you were anticipating is like a 10-minute tennis bet, right? Just waiting for this game to wrap up. Let me just hop in, for this high probability situation. It has now shifted into really a battle, a tiebreaker battle for that final set. So, nonetheless, though, I do favor this over this. I favor the tennis over the basketball. At the same time, too, I've engaged both of these, but significantly engaged, like I've engaged the tennis bet significantly more than the basketball bet. So, um, I would say the reason that, basketball ultimately is play three is because of the time that it takes. So while these bets can potentially stretch longer than anticipated, the basketball money line bet is for sure going to take at least 30 minutes, man. It is extremely rare for it to, like you'll just see as we go through this, it's extremely rare for it to be under, 20 to 30 minutes. So personally, the quicker that I can rotate the cash, right, and these tennis and soccer bets, that essentially like gives me that capital back to go hunt for more opportunities. And at the end of the day, like the basketball money line offering is not so asymmetrical um, that it makes sense to sit in these as well. But at the same time, too, when it's offered, I don't think it's necessarily wrong, right? So really, all I'm doing here is I'm like hunting yield. I'm hunting yield through high probability situations. And so if this is like the highest probability situation offered, at that moment, I'll engage it. Um, but really something that I can appreciate is like when capital gets tied up, even if it's tied up for half an hour, right? Like all of this is extremely relative. Um, because a 30-minute situation, dude, most people would consider that to be like a fast turning of the capital. That's an extremely fast turning of the capital. But shit, man, it's not as fast as a 9-minute turning of the capital. So I hope what I'm saying is, making sense as far as sort of like intro into the psychological profile and like the risk psychology, if you will. So yeah, dude, I feel like that's a fair little um, explanation, and it's really just me rotating those three situations, right? So either way, on to the next day here, right? 22nd, 24th, 24th. It's also worth mentioning, like I'm not, I'm not taking like here in January, this little sample campaign, we're not taking a lot of activity. And, a viewer should be encouraged, understanding that you don't have to take like a ton and ton and ton and ton of activity. You can take like 8 engagements and double your cash. And like these aren't crazy bets, man. These are money line bets betting on the favored party at an advantageous time within the game. An advantageous time, an advantageous mini situation within the game, late game, right? So either way, I don't want to just like rant and rant and rant and ramble. But I don't really know how else to present this without making it kind of a conversation. I'm not just gonna like read off the graph to you. Um, but yeah, so those are those three situations. That's me engaging those three situations. And you'll see sort of a commonality here with the soccer. Most of these engagements are soccer engagements, soccer and tennis, obviously, as we get into March. And so just observe this and observe the patterns that present themselves. So I'm engaging late game, right? Essentially as close to 90 minutes as possible, right? And really how I do that, for these three bets here, these excuse me, just had a freaking burger. Um, these four bets here for January. So yeah, 50% of the activity providing, right, like most of the yield as well when you look at the odds. And really the way that it's you know, there's only one over 10 minutes. So that's something I can appreciate as well, right? Looking to hold the lead at the 89th minute, looking to hold the lead at the 93rd minute, looking to hold the lead at the 86th minute. And so all of those different situations as well. Potentially, if you really wanted to go in depth with this specific play, this play one, if you literally just want to run play one over and over and over in different types of ways, could potentially be understanding what like the potential max overtime would be for this league, right? Haras El Hadoud is obviously in a different league than Cide Marquinhos, right? This is some like, I mean, again, I don't remember, but this is some like obscure um, minor league, pro league, in like freaking Latin America. This is some South American minor pro league match. This is some Middle Eastern minor pro league match. I believe this is also Middle Eastern minor pro league, right? And so DraftKings is like offering these. I don't know these teams at all, dude. I don't know who these people are. I don't know who these teams are. But at the same time, too, understanding like as you build out profiles on these teams, it would only be helpful, right? And so I'm not saying that in arrogance. I'm saying that that's really where my head's at moving forward into 2026. Is like building out play one better. You know what I'm saying? Um, saying that, say, man, like, is there a possible like, could I have possibly engaged this later? Understanding this game is going to go to like the 100th minute, if you will, right? They seem to offer more overtime in the Middle Eastern leagues. I don't know if that's like a freaking fact. Um, but it's like worth noting, right? Versus something like a Major League Soccer game, English Premier League, American Pro League, or whatever. They're only going to have like, I don't know, dude, 2 to 4 minutes of overtime is not uncommon, right? Like this game in theory would only have like 30 seconds left in an American League, you know, in theory, right? The officials ultimately make that call at the end of the day, but most of these are going like this game is going into, this 8 minute bet engaged at the 93rd minute. That's going into like the 100th minute, right? This 11-minute bet engaged at the 86th minute. That's going into the 97. You know what I mean? Like it's going into the late 90s, right? So a lot of different questions there, a lot of different things to consider. We'll just skip February, I suppose, um, because there's really not a whole lot of, like data. But either way, just sort of wrapping up the January observations there. This was the January situation, right? Just a couple tennis bets, nothing crazy. Definitely can appreciate, right? Like the shortness of this bet, the singular 1 minute bet. Third set activity as well. In some of my notes, man, it's like I'm saying like, okay, I'm betting on this lead, and so I don't know what this set is, but you'll see, especially as you get into March, it's like I'm either betting on that second set or third set. So all those different situations as well could be built out within play two. And obviously play three as well, man. For some reason, um, I'm just not as familiar with it. I'm not as familiar with basketball. I literally don't watch basketball as much. I don't really watch sports at all. Um, and there's nothing wrong if you do, but there's just something about it that doesn't appeal to me as much as the tennis and the soccer bets. But yeah, I mean, this is the ideal, man. I would rather get the quick rotation on a, negative 3,000 1 minute bet and just like hammer this type of situation over and over and over and over and let compound interest take place than sit in something like this for like 20 minutes, you know? At the same time, though, this isn't wrong. And so I'm definitely not saying that the basketball money line play is wrong. I'm simply sharing my psychological profile, right? So yeah, we'll go into February a little bit. Again, I don't have the data. This is in DraftKings. This is in the first video, and some things can be sort of inferred. Like this is probably a soccer bet. This is probably a soccer bet. Probably a basketball bet, right? I don't remember what this was, right? But like, could you sit in a 1 hour and 30 minute bet? Do you even like want to do that? You know what I mean? Um, dude, if I remember correctly, this might have been a tennis bet. Um, and so, from that time perspective, you could say that almost like tennis almost belongs like as play three, because it could potentially take that long, man. Like I thought this lady was gonna win. I remember this game, but I don't remember who. Like it was literally on um, it was literally like the Roku tennis game, dude. Like like the Roku box, the television box. It was like it was some obscure freaking minor league tennis match, dude. But either way, I just remember it was like, this lady won first set. She's dominating second set. She's up like 3-0. I hit it. And then she literally just fucking tanks, you know? Loses that second set and then has to absolutely battle and barely squeezes out. And that's why it takes an hour and 30. So ultimately, are you psychologically like ready for something like that? Are you detached from the capital at the end of the day? Or is your risk adjusted accordingly, et cetera, et cetera? So all those questions, man. March is probably going to be the most potent study here. This is where I take the most activity and, really where there's like just basic consistency, right? And it's like, okay, this lady is dominating. This dude is dominating. This lady's dominating. This lady's dominating. This lady's dominating. This lady's dominating, right? This dude's dominating. Ended in that tie or, that first set, second set tie. But this lady is like favored. She's going to win. She's taking care of business. But again, with that 23-minute bet, right? Various situations as well, right? Tiebreaker takes 2 minutes. Second set, probably situation takes 2 minutes. And so, you can't appreciate how quick tennis can be, right? At the end of the day, like a 2 minute bet is excellent, man. Even if it's, I mean, like I think a noob would see the dollar values here and discard the conversation that we're having, discard the essentially like probability science that we're talking about here. But at the same time, like, what is that return? Uh, it's like a 2% return, like really quickly, right? Most people are looking for like 2% a month in the market or something like that. So, yeah, um, simply a study of the compounding, right? That's really all we're talking about here. So, would you rather engage this over and over and just let the compound take place, or do you want to, sit in a bet for, well, this was actually a rain delay situation, but would you want to sit in the bet for like an hour? Talking about this one specifically, right? Carlos Alcaraz, literally one of the best players in the world. He was playing someone who was, considerably worse than him. And so I was just convicted in Alcaraz, dude. I'd been watching Alcaraz for a while that year. Alcaraz really did have a nice year last year. Um, so there is nuance there. Like, would you be willing to like sit in this, knowing like, yeah, dude, Alcaraz is probably gonna fucking win. At the same time, too, right? It's not necessarily that simple. So kind of interesting situations, right? Within this, this next little sample run here, this next little sample campaign, putting in $50, running it up a little bit, and then adding $10 into the account, and then adding an additional. So like going from 50 to 70, right? And then putting the 10 on a couple of interesting situations. So Polina Kudermatora is up in the second set. She's going to win the second set. It's so freaking obvious. DraftKings is barely willing to offer the other side. I still hit it for the sake of hitting it, for the sake of harvesting the yield. She goes down intra-set, right? And so that could present itself as like, okay, hypothetically, Polina's up 3-0. I hit the bet. It's negative 50,000. She's obviously working. She's going to dominate. Oh shit, opponent is coming back. It's 3-1, 3-2, 3-3. Now it's tied. Polina might not win this set. Depending on your conviction, you could just hit the reduced money line though. And so that's really what I do here as that demonstration. Potentially having dry powder on the side as its own situation, right? Within play two, within this tennis money line, because there are so many different trees offered, like probability trees offered that could potentially present themselves on the way to that desired result. What would you want to see to potentially like double down? You know what I'm saying? So you can appreciate too, just that like the money line offering absolutely tanked. And then she won. And so it's like there's the way that the money line responds to what's happening in the game as well is also important, right? Was also willing to engage essentially like a more risky situation. Brooksby here was just showing nice momentum. And so I knew that, okay, like if I take this loss, this isn't going to like wipe out the account, right? Relative to our, you know, whatever percentage 10 is of 70. It's not even that big of a deal. We can just, take the remaining 60 and just continue to rotate it. So that in and of itself is its own thing, right? Like all the different ways that you would manage the account. You can see that I just like take 100% of the account, just rotate it, rotate it, rotate it, rotate it. Maybe you want to take, 10% of the account and put it in like take more aggressive bets, right? Looking for that like 30% return in 20 minutes, right? Simultaneously, something worth mentioning with tennis, dude, is the rain delay. The rain delay does suck. This dude's obviously going to work. He's obviously going to win the second set, and then it starts freaking raining. Um, can you handle that? Do you even want to like lock up your capital for something like that, for that to potentially happen? Do you want to freaking understand what the weather's like at the location of the match, et cetera, et cetera? All those different considerations, man. Um, but obviously, I was not anticipating that this would happen. And so it ended up being in like a 6 hour bet to make $3, which is kind of funny, right? But bringing it back, dude, this is all about return on capital. It's also sort of an exercise, right? Like, can you detach? Dude, if you couldn't comfortably, if you could not comfortably risk $100, you definitely have no business risking like thousands of dollars. That's for sure, right? Um, and I don't know, man. I think there's really, I'm definitely not here to defend that or really make anyone even understand that. But at the same time, too, dude, it's a worthy conversation. And it's a conversation that, like, most quote unquote gamblers don't want to hear. Most people on the wrong side of the market don't want to hear. They don't want to understand that there's a certain attachment that is needed and absolutely necessary to successfully engage risk consistently. And if you give yourself the time and the space to work up in the capital and just to yeah, like literally allow the capital that you're managing to slowly grow and don't try and skip steps, you'll find that the psychological foundation is just simply stronger. Either way, I'll continue here. And I'll really try and keep the ranting to a minimum. But really, right, like again, first soccer bet here. We start off March as tennis, 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 tennis. That could be its own strategy potentially, right? If we're in like some type of, there's a bunch of tournaments going on or something like that. I don't remember what this was, dude. There was some open going on here in March. Understanding that that's going on and literally just betting on the people who are obviously gonna advance farther in the tournament. That's like really all I'm doing. And those are nice situations where like the big dogs are playing the little dogs, and when the little dogs are showing that momentum, hitting the money line then because the money line is down, because we obviously know that like the big dog whatever is going to win long term, and so that's its own situation within the tennis game as well, right? Depending on your conviction. So first soccer bet here of March, holding that 1-0 lead at the 102nd minute. So you can appreciate that as well, right? This game goes to essentially what, like the 108th minute. Pretty fascinating. A lot of second set though, right? Second set, 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 third set, second set. Obviously third set, right, with the tiebreaker. Not sure what happened here. Second set, right, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah. Um, you can see as we progress through this little mini campaign here in March, we're about like 4 days in, and then about a week in, and then I start hitting some soccer bets, really allowing the account to compound a little bit faster, if you will. Definitely something to appreciate is like these like lower returns, kind of sure things. It's not a sure thing. Um, but like a lower risk, a lower like simply the nature of the risk is lower in these tennis bets versus a soccer bet. How do you complement these within your account and essentially like compound in a fashion that is ideal for you, right? You can see how the soccer can almost provide like a boost to the compounding. And then you could go back, right, and just hit these like, these 3% returns, 7% returns, 8% returns, 5% returns, etc., versus this like 20% return. I believe that's what that equates to, give or take. Um, Down into the soccer here, right? Money line, money line. First draw money line, essentially anticipating that this match is going to end in the draw. And so it's the same situation. It's the same concept here with soccer play or with play one soccer money line. But it's simply understanding that like games also end in draws. And so we're anticipating that like we're not looking for some crazy thing to happen late game. At least that's not the play with you know play one here. That could be its own situation, its own risk profile. Um, and obviously there's like more asymmetric risk offered in those types of situations as well, right? But either way, looking for that late game situation to essentially finish in its current state. Like we're currently in that 1-1 draw, we're going to end in the 1-1 draw. And we see that pan out in 2 minutes, right? So you can appreciate that as well. Like, how can you hit this as late as possible in overtime while the money line is still offered without it being so late that they're no longer willing to take the opposite side of your bet, right? A lot of soccer activity here. Pretty fascinating here, right? Rain delay. This was not a hour long bet. This was like the next day. So yeah, man, I mean, is that something that you could account for? Um, Understanding like, okay, dude, I probably would have kept betting on this day. Your capital's now tied up. You know what I'm saying? So how do you handle that? Um, at the end of the day, too, man, I mean, it's super easy to get into bets. It's a lot harder to practice discipline and like almost like abstain and then tactically engage. So potentially blessing in disguise type of thing, right? At the end of the day, like it does you no good to try and like force activity. Um, all of these bets, man, are not forced activity. This is like taking in this info and objectively and in an attached fashion engaging the risk. And so, different perspectives with the rain delay. Is the rain delay a blessing or a curse? Is it potentially an opportunity? Um, Sort of a nudging to like step away from the computer, step away from the risk for a second, um, and go take a freaking walk, or just level out psychologically, right? As you're engaging in these risk situations, doing that over a prolonged period of time, it is psychologically taxing. So potentially seeing that as its own situation, simultaneously being able to work that into your like plan itself, right? I'm going to engage X amount of times and then I'm going to go on a freaking walk, or I'm going to go on like a 5 hour run and then I'm going to stop for the day. And then I'm going to finish up with like a 2 hour run, right? Different questions, man, different perspectives. What is right for you, right? But yeah, man, pretty interesting how I, wrap up with the soccer here for this bet or for this little campaign, right? So we took that $50, or really $70 into 250 here. So that was that first little mini campaign of March. On to the second campaign. This was like our, quote unquote most aggressive campaign so far of the year, right? So we had that $100, $300, $70. Now we're, working with something a little bit more beefy, 1,500. Um, at the same time, though, just because the capital is increased, it doesn't mean that anything else changes. Ultimately, that's really all we're literally engaging in the same situations, and so despite the capital being larger, you'll see that the pattern is the same. So basketball bet here, not quite that 10-point lead late in the fourth. Pretty fascinating, right? We were just looking at that. We looked at that Portland game at the beginning of January here. 4 minutes left in the fourth, ends up taking 20 minutes to pan out. 10 minutes left in the fourth, ends up taking 30 minutes to pan out. Let's find another basketball game. Okay, this is the first one, but kind of interesting, right? This Chinese league game. 3:10 left in the fourth, ends up taking 8 minutes. So like they wrap this game up pretty quick, right? And so you understand that as well within basketball. It ultimately depends. Like, are they just fouling as much as possible, trying to make the other team shoot free throws, trying to preserve some time? Um, or is this like live action just running, the clock's just running down naturally, right? So all those different considerations as well. But yeah, man, gotta love the money line tennis bets ultimately, right? That's like where the majority of the activity comes from. Second set, third set, second set, second set, third set, right? All these different perspectives. Understanding that like there's three different ways that the three set game could present itself, like that end result. What do you need to see enter game? What do you need to see in DraftKings? What do you need to see or feel within yourself to engage? So very nice. 1 minute, right? 5 minutes, 2 minutes. And so tennis does and has the potential to provide like a very quick turnaround, a very quick engagement. You're only in risk for like 2 minutes, dude. I remember this game specifically. Was betting on the second set, right? She goes to work in the first set. Looks like she's going to work in the second set. Obviously, it's not what happens, right? We go to that third game, tiebreaker ends up winning, etc. Um, but that can be a bit of a headache. You know what I mean? Especially when you engage in such a high betting odds. Excuse me. If DraftKings is offering that negative 5,000 money line odds, they basically think this lady's about to, pull it off. Obviously, as we enter into the third set, the money line goes down drastically. And so we were talking about that earlier, um, up here, right? This lady hits that year. Well, she's like literally about to win. It's a negative 50,000 odds. Then it becomes apparent that she's potentially not about to win. However, like, she's the better player. She's probably still going to pull it out. But really, like, the money line goes down like over 90%, offering significantly, like a significantly better odds, a significantly better bet, return on capital wise, right? Taking $65 to make 13 cents is not nearly as efficient as taking $10 to make 40 cents, right? Where were we? But yeah, either way, that was that Green Minute game. Um, again, right? Soccer. Very interesting, right? Earliest hit, if you will, if this team is like clearly the better team. And this is clear, like they are, like DraftKings isn't going to even offer this in a second. So I might as well just hop in. That's kind of where my head's at when I hit these, the 70th minute, etc. So is, sitting in it for 30 minutes worth it to just capture that yield? In my opinion, yeah, potentially. Um, so those are those different questions, man, different psychological makeups. So tennis, tiebreaker, nothing crazy. 1 minute though. Is it worth it to be able to, take this capital, invest it, and make this in 1 minute? In my opinion, yeah, man, it is. And so I don't shy away from the, and that's not in some type of, like if you wouldn't hit that, you're not as badass as me. That's not what I'm saying at all, dude. What I'm really trying to say is that like psychologically, I don't mind the fact that this is like I'm risking this much to only make this because it's pretty much a sure thing, right? Obviously, it's not, but probabilistically speaking, long term perspectives, it is. So just continuing, but I mean, like you can really appreciate the difference between even though this was a 1 minute situation. It's fairly uncommon for there to be like that late game switch. It's fairly uncommon. I've been watching the soccer for a while. That doesn't mean that it doesn't happen, but like observed phenomenon is that like this situation, this play one happens a good amount, man. Um, you can just appreciate like the difference in the yield here, even though it's like 1 minute versus 8 minutes. Same thing though, right? Being able to take it from here to there and then immediately back, that's solid. You know what I mean? That's a solid situation. It's a solid way to like move the capital around. 120 in, 30 minutes. To then take it back and potentially put it on like a more risky play, right? Really stretching it out. And really you can see like especially when you put some decent cash in the account, the compound really can take effect pretty handsomely. And so I'm really looking to engage these high probability situations and occasionally throw in play one to really compound, right? How many times would I have to, how would I have to hit these sure thing tennis bets to make this one time? You know what I'm saying? those 5 minutes of activity. And really just the way that it, like, when you do compound the sure thing situations, even though this is a fairly up in the air offering. If it's around 10% or so, that 10% return, like, it's likely, but it's not really a sure thing, man. Like, I've seen plenty of the 10% offerings switch up. So yeah, dude, a lot of different questions, a lot of different perspectives here. Another basketball, right? 30 minutes. Really just seeing like 14-point lead, dude. I'm anticipating the stretches to like 20 or so, right? Um, Willing to hit it in the third quarter if there is such a large lead. So those are all questions right within that basketball play. Again, like if there is that multi-point lead in a soccer match and the money line is still offered, I'll basically hit it no matter what. Like, what are the odds that the team that is losing scores multiple goals and there's like 20 minutes left? There's 20, 30 minutes left. It's not high at all, right? Again, third set. Again, third quarter, right? This might have been a couple Greek leagues, I believe. Again, that 2-0, that multi-point lead really gives cushion. Like, the other team could score, and you're still quote unquote safe. But again, just bringing it back to that time perspective, 40-minute match versus a 9-minute match. 40 minutes to make this, 9 minutes to make this. Obviously, it's not that binary. Obviously, it's not that black and white. But psychologically, what are you looking for? You know what I mean? Into the spring solstice here. A lot of soccer activity. Again, that multi-point earlier in the game again, right? And then some draws late game. And just wrapping up a little bit here. So, yeah, man, that was that first run. First, like, kind of honestly first and only real run here for March. Last day of March, putting in 1,500 into the account again, right? So we went on that run from, started off here March 17th, ended March 23rd, give or take a week, right? So I really like the idea of potentially just like going hard for a week, um, and then maybe taking a week off. You know what I'm saying? But either way, coming back for that last bet of March, putting it in, like, withdrawing the capital, taking 1,500, putting it back in, and essentially just looking to do the same thing again. Starting off in April here, and we experienced our first loss here on April Fools. How about that? And so again, like patterns, right? Same pattern. Late money line bet. Pretty interesting. Cashed out early. Huser here ended up winning. Is that something you'd be willing to do? You know what I mean? Would you be willing to like take that $800 loss to potentially save, the 1,500, like the entire account, right? Would you be okay if this happened to you? Would you want to freaking pull your hair out, or would you just like be, I don't know, shit, all right, whatever. Not necessarily, oh, whatever, but could you handle it like a professional, right? Understanding that this is all about capital management at the end of the day. What have we done? What am I thinking when this happened? What am I thinking here on April Fools? I'm literally like, okay, let me just preserve this capital. Let me take a step back. That's literally all I'm thinking, dude. I'm not thinking, oh crap, I got to get this back ASAP. Oh my God, my freaking ego. My ego is bruised. I need to make this back as soon as possible. That is exactly what this industry preys upon. In the first video, we were talking about, like the visual stimulation of DraftKings. Um, on that, deeper level, though, man, most people cannot handle loss. They cannot handle any type of loss, any type of freaking adversity in the financial realm because one, so many people's foundation with money is like fucked up. Obviously, there's a lot of different things going on there, right? Everyone's got different situations. I'm not claiming to understand everyone's situation or whatever, and prescribe or act like, oh man, just think positively or like all that. I'm not here for that bullshit. But really, what I'm trying to say is that like a lot of us, me included, I've definitely had money trauma, right? And so to lose 800, man, in my mind, it's like, damn, dude, that's like half of rent, give or take. You know what I mean? That's like fucking multiple months of groceries, whatever that is, right? Psychologically, how do you ultimately detach from that, though, right? You have to be pretty detached to risk like multiple months of expenses. You know what I'm saying? So after going on a run like this, is this even like that big of a deal? Of course not, dude. I mean, you just ate into a good amount of the P&L or a good amount of the profit, but we know this isn't like a 100% guarantee. You know what I mean? That's the whole point. So a lot of different, questions and perspectives there. How do you handle that psychologically? How do you handle losses? Handling the losses is extremely important, man. It's extremely important. Um, really, all you can do at the end of the day is like immediately drop down the risk, right? So you see that I do that here in July, stepping back in July, hitting a soccer match, Poland women's team. Very nice return ultimately, that negative 450. And then this is our first soccer engagement where I engage 1-0 lead at the 88th, negative 3,500. That's, fairly solid. Looks like Rosario's about to pull it out. Game ends as a 1-1 tie. Another L, right? Down essentially 1,100, out of our, what is it, dude? I'm trying to do the math. Like 3,600, if you will. Let me hit this math really quick. Let me grab my calculator for some public math. Uh, yeah, I mean, it's like literally eating into almost like 30% of this little run, or like this run that we just went on. Okay, that is the situation I'm in. What do I do? Do I just start dumping money into the account and start going fucking? Do I go on tilt? Right. That's what it's called when the fear takes over, the short term thinking takes over, and you gotta make it back now. I gotta make it back now because my self worth is attached to this, and uh, my ego, and no one fucks with me, right? It's like literally treat. It's like you're projecting all of that bullshit onto this extremely detached, like like DraftKings does not care about you, dude. The market does not care about you. It is simply numerical logic. There is no emotion. Like emotion does not belong, right? I do think intuition does belong though. At the end of the day, that's where most of these calls are coming from. Um, but either way, another loss experience. What do you do, dude? Drop the risk. That's what you do, bro. You don't freaking uh, immediately try and make it back, right? And so you can see, like, as I take these losses, I just kind of fade away, right? I did what I needed to do this year. Boom, fade away. There is no rush. There's no need to even make it back. You know what I mean? So a lot of different thoughts, right? Pretty fascinating psychologically. As far as, just a demonstration of how you handle losses, especially if you're going on a run. Um, do you literally just try and get this back as soon as possible? No, man. No, not at all. There's no need. There's simply no need. So, yeah, I hope this provided some value. Um, Not a whole lot else to say. That's the overall situation here. And yeah, in the third video, um, we'll go into my notes and just kind of look at like where my head's at with that. A lot of different situations offered, in my personal opinion, a lot of different situations offered intra game that could potentially be engaged. So yeah, man, thanks for watching. Peace.